Won't get through it in time, I don't believe. I'll hurry here. He said the presentation was dazzling. I appreciate that. This is all, by the way, not taxpayer funded. You say I take a most extreme position, believing the Bible is literally true. I plead guilty as charged. You said the presentation was slick. That, at least by most people, I think would be taken as kind of a backhanded slap. Quick rattling off of facts that are misconstrued, I would interpret that to be a lie. I would be glad to defend, anything I've said. Take one topic at a time. Professional debater, make my living at it. I paid $900 to get a ticket to come up here. I was in northern Michigan earlier this week, flew all the way home, spoke 6 times yesterday, came up here just for this debate. I'm not going to make a penny off of this. I don't make money off of this. It bothered me a little bit knowing that you for 30 years have gotten your salary from the taxpayers of this area to teach evolution theory, and I don't take a dime of taxpayer money. That seems to me something's wrong with all this. I'm not a professional debater. I was just simply a high school science teacher who got fed up with kids being brainwashed with one particular theory. As far as the Hulk Hogan, well, you can see the resemblance is striking. I would think after 30 years of teaching this very topic, you would be the Hulk Hogan of the evolutionists. And you mentioned you might lose because you're outmatched. Well, for heaven's sake, this is what you teach all day, every day, and get paid for. None of my material is copyrighted, never has been. I never have charged a dime for any of my seminars, and I've never sent out a letter begging for money. That's been my policy since I started. And you mentioned, I don't know if it didn't get the quote down quick enough, but the university would have failed if they did not emerge having an understanding of, and you rattled off several things, and one of which was embryology. I trust you're not referring to what was disproven in 1874 about the ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. You referred to it again later as the homology of genes for embryology is evidence for evolution. I would really like to see you elaborate on that, because I think the homology of genes is evidence of a design, same design feature, same designer. Same designer made all these things. And you mentioned about the statement, how I portrayed science was incorrect. Again, I guess I like to simplify things. It looks to me like you're saying I lied about the way science is portrayed. Let me just spell it out very clearly. The scientific method, you said, and I agree, you start off with a guess. Then you compute the consequences. What would this imply? Then you would do some experiments, and the experiments must be repeatable. I agree. And if the experiments do not verify the guess, you throw out the guess. You get a new one. Let me tell you my scientific theory. I believe the evidence will show, after intensive investigation, that no amount of scientific evidence will ever show that matter can create itself. Therefore, there must be an outside source that created the matter. Now, that goes beyond science, goes into a religion, and the creationist says, yep, we agree, we have a religion, we believe God did it. Can't prove it, that's what we believe. What happens is, though, the evolutionist does not admit they have a religion in this area. Where is the scientific evidence to show where matter originated? Where is the scientific evidence? Where is it repeatable? You said you'd like to see things repeated 3 times. I'd like to see 3 experiments where somebody makes something from nothing. I would like to see the experiment where life learned or came from non-living material. This has never been observed. This is part of a religion. Evolution is the religion. They have to believe life came from non-living material. We've had numerous experiments with raising, pick any kind of animal or plant you'd like. All of the experimentation has taught us dogs produce dogs. Roses produce roses. Now, I suspect from what you have said that you believe somewhere back in the past, dogs came from something that was non-dog. You're welcome to believe that. What experiments do you have for that? What scientific evidence do you have to show us that a dog came from a non-dog, or that a dog can produce a non-dog, or pick any other animal if you'd like? If your expertise is woodpeckers, I'd really be curious on that one, since the woodpecker has the tongue that goes around his head and anchors on top of his eyebrow. What intermediate species do you have showing the tongue changing from normal bird tongue to the top of the head tongue? And where's the fossil evidence of anything besides a woodpecker? Anything intermediate? I mean, just within the bird kind. I mean, where's the evidence? If that's your expertise, I'd love to see some evidence on that. Experimentation for the origin of life, I think, the evolutionists simply believe matter either created itself or is eternal. Those go strictly against the first and second laws of thermodynamics. That's not science, that's religion. The evolutionist must believe life came from non-living material. He's boxed himself into a corner, folks. That's the only option. If you're going to exclude God, then you have to give a naturalistic explanation for how life got started. I've never heard him do that. Miller and Urey tried it years ago. There have been numerous experiments to try to create life. Total failures. What Miller was able to make after a very carefully contrived fictitious experiment where he made a fictitious atmosphere of 4 gases and left out oxygen purposely. We can go for days on that if you'd like. He left out oxygen because he knew oxygen would destroy the life. Problem is, without oxygen, you don't have ozone, and then the UV light destroys the life. You can't get life to evolve with oxygen, and you can't get life to evolve without oxygen. Looks to me like you can't get life to evolve. What he was able to make after this experiment was done, and by the way, he trapped out his residue each time so it wouldn't go back through because it would be destroyed again. It's not a natural explanation at all. He was able to make 85% tar, 13% carboxylic acid, and 2% amino acids. The amino acids will bond quickly with the tar or the carboxylic acid and destroy them. All he made was basically 2 amino acids, a few of others, but basically 2. There are 20 required for life. And they all have to be in a precise order and all right-handed or left-handed, depending if it's a sugar or DNA molecule. And all he made was all a mixture. He got half right-handed, half left-handed. The chirality was all mixed up. It's never gonna form in life. And we can go for days on that if you like, but I just want to kind of hit the highlights here. I would say the experimentation has shown us, the scientific evidence has shown us, dogs always produce dogs, roses always produce roses. Therefore, the evidence shows us there had to be a beginning to this someplace, and it must have been the same kind of animal, because we've never seen an animal produce a different kind. So that goes right back to what the Bible says. God created the animals, and they bring forth after their kind. Now, I can't prove that, but all the evidence has shown us that that is indeed correct. I think the Genesis account is not nebulous on this. It tells us very clearly, God made the animals to bring forth after their kind. If you have an exception to that, I would love to see it. If you find a fossil in the ground that someone claims is intermediate, oh, I meant to turn that thing on. First place, when you find a fossil in the ground, you know one couple things for sure. It died. Now, you do not know if it had any kids, let alone different kids. All you know is it died. It's buried. The very existence of fossils, to me, is a powerful evidence of a worldwide flood because, again, fossils don't form under normal conditions. They have to be buried quickly. Let me get a few more things before I get into where I was leaving off here. Science and non-science. You must state a theory with detail. I agree. Evolution, macroevolution, is not science. It's non-science and nonsense. We've never seen this happen. Nobody's ever seen an animal produce a different kind of animal. But like I said, beer is sold at football games, and macroevolution is included in with science, and I'm sorry about that. I'm working on it pretty hard. I'm trying to get it out of there. Selection operates on variations only. I agree, but like I said, the variations have limits. And the selection process is not going to change it to a new kind of animal any more than GM's quality control will change the truck to a helicopter. It'll just make a stronger truck. That's all it can do. Neo-Darwinism, I suspect you're referring to Stephen Gould or Niles Eldredge or rebuilding of Goldschmidt's theory, punctuated equilibrium. If that's what you believe, then we'll talk about that in a second. But the textbooks show these family trees as if we all came from a bacteria. Even Mary Leakey, an evolutionist, said, all those trees of life with their branches of our ancestors is a lot of nonsense. Stephen Gould, the evolutionary trees that adorn our textbooks have data only at the tips and nodes of their branches. The rest is inference. However reasonable, not the evidence of fossils. Stephen Gould says there's no evidence, but they show these in the textbooks as if we all came. The humans, the birds, and the crocodiles had a common ancestor. That's propaganda. That's not science. All we know is humans have produced humans, birds have produced birds, crocodiles have produced crocodiles. Now, if you want to believe they got a common ancestor, fine, but I resent letting my tax dollars go to have that be taught to the kids in our school system. Glencoe Biology says all the many forms of life on Earth today are descended from a common ancestor. I don't believe that for a second. All I've ever seen is dogs produce dogs. That's all anybody's ever seen. So what the evolutionist appeals to is time. Well, maybe it happened, billions of years ago, slowly. So in other words, because we don't see it happening, that proves it happened in the past. Well, try that in a court of law, see how far you get. The DNA structure, we'd love to talk about that. The human DNA is unbelievably complex. This DNA code you have, just the code from one person, if it's the DNA's chromosomes in your body would stretch from Earth to the moon and back 5 million times, coming out of 2 tablespoons. Unbelievably complex DNA code that we have. And we could talk about that all day if you like. Textbooks often show the kids that the horse evolved from a 4-toed horse. This is one of their evidences. It's in almost every biology textbook. What they don't tell the kids, and I think they should, is that the original so-called horse, the Eohippus, has 18 pairs of ribs. The Mesohippus has 15 pairs of ribs. Merohippus has 19. Modern horse has back to 18. They also don't tell them that the experts on horse evolution are saying this horse evolution has not held up to scrutiny. Here's the problems with it. Othniel Marsh made this up in 1874. He picked animals from all over the world. He arranged them in the order he thought it happened. He did not find them in that order. Modern horses are found in layers with and lower than the ancient horses. The ancient horse is not a horse at all. It's a hyrax, still alive today in South America. It's the size of a fox. It's a meat-eating animal. There's no relation. The ribs are different, the toes are different, the teeth are different. It's just pure propaganda to arrange them in some fictitious order. That is not the way they're found at all. Tulsa Zoo finally took out their horse evolution display because so many people complained about it being inaccurate. I think that's fair. Yale University still has theirs, and I suspect your textbooks here still have theirs. Because after all, what would we replace it with? Arranging things in order doesn't prove a thing, folks. If I get buried on top of a hamster, that doesn't prove he's my grandpa. The order of burial proves nothing. And I think the fossil evidence is indicating that there was a worldwide flood and it shuffled these things around for several months during this flood. And animals are... By the way, if I handed a geologist at your university a piece of limestone and said, would you please tell me if this is Cambrian limestone, Jurassic limestone, Permian limestone? I mean, limestone's found in all the different eras. How do you know the age of the limestone? There is only one way they can tell the age of that limestone. By the index fossils. The fossils determine the age of the rock layer it comes from. But the rock layer determines the age of the fossils that are in it. Circular reasoning, folks, that's what it's based on. We can talk for several days on that if you'd like. I've arranged stuff in order for years. I proved knives evolved to forks very slowly over millions of years. I even found the missing link. Right between forks and spoons. There's the missing link right there. Just arranging something in order doesn't prove anything, folks. Can't believe textbooks are now telling the kids that birds are the descendants of dinosaurs. How absurd can you get? You don't just stick a few feathers on them and say, come on, man, let's go, you can do it. It's not quite that simple, folks. The birds have feathers, obviously. Reptiles have scales. This textbook says bird feathers evolved from the same scales that protected the dinosaurs so well. Nobody's ever seen that happen. First place, feathers and scales come from different genes on the chromosome. Secondly, they're both made out of keratin, and that's where the similarity stops. They attach to the skin or to the body differently. Feathers are an extremely complex structure. Extremely complex. Now, if you want to believe that came from a frayed scale from an animal trying to chase insects and catch them with his flappers, feathers on his wings, you're welcome to believe that, but that's not science. That's, again, part of somebody's religion. Problems with the bird evolution. The lungs are totally different between birds and reptiles. One have a sac-type lung, reptiles do, birds have a tubular-type lung. Modern birds are found in layers with and lower than the dinosaurs. Scales and feathers attach to the body differently and develop from different genes on the chromosomes. Birds have a 4-chambered heart, reptiles have a 3-chambered heart. Reptiles lay leathery eggs. There are literally thousands of differences. I don't care if somebody wants to believe dinosaurs turned to birds. They can believe that if they want. But don't use my money to put it in our schools to teach it to my kids. Now, if these folks want to go start a private school and teach evolution to whoever wants to pay and come learn it, that's fine. But they know that endeavor would fall flat on its face in a hurry. So the only way you can push this evolution religion is to get all the taxpayers to pay for it in a university like this. That's not fair. Swinson, British Museum of Natural History, largest fossil collection in the world, said the evolutionary origin of birds is largely a matter of deduction. There is no fossil evidence of the stages through which the remarkable change from reptile to bird was achieved. But the textbook says, boys and girls, Archaeopteryx is evidence. This is the one they always use, Archaeopteryx. They say it has claws on its wings, which is true. So do 11 other birds, the ostrich, the hoatzin, the turaco, the ibis. Several birds have claws on their wings. And the example here that this proves he used to be a dinosaur is again saying, look, he lost his claws. Okay. That doesn't prove how he got them. That's an example of losing. Same thing with the teeth in the beak. Not many birds have teeth. Ostrich and, Archaeopteryx and Hesperornis, the only ones I'm aware of. But some fish have teeth, some don't. Some reptiles have teeth, some don't. Some of you have teeth, some don't. Again, that doesn't prove anything. And that's another example of losing, not gaining. That's not an example that's going to help the evolution theory. Textbook says the coccyx, the tailbone, has no present function. Now, this author is either extremely ignorant of anatomy, or he's a liar desperately trying to find evidence to support his religion. I would be nice and call him stupid. I hope he's not lying deliberately, but he certainly is stupid about anatomy. The tailbone is not a vestigial structure. Be nice to have a tail, wouldn't it? Be able to come to the door with 2 sacks of groceries. Charles Darwin said, if my theory be true, numberless intermediate varieties must assuredly have existed. Page 211, right here. Well, Charlie, what have we found? Largest fossil collection in the world, British Museum of Natural History, Colin Patterson, responded to the question, why didn't you show us any pictures of missing links in your book? Colin Patterson responded, I fully agree with your comments on the lack of evolutionary transitions in my book, if I knew of any, fossil or living. That's interesting. Why would you include a living creature as a missing link? He said, I would certainly have included them. I will lay it on the line. There is not one such fossil. That's why the whole chain is missing, folks. It's not a missing link we're looking for. Even Stephen Gould said the absence of fossil evidence for intermediary stages has been a persistent and nagging problem for evolution. That's why he and Niles Eldredge have got their theory called punctuated equilibrium. Now, Goldschmidt came up with this earlier, in the 1940s, I believe, that maybe the hopeful monster theory. You know, maybe a reptile laid an egg and a bird hatched up. And Gould and Eldredge polished it up a little bit, and they said, well, maybe just evolution happened in jumps or leaps. They call it saltations. See, Darwin said evolution happened slowly and gradually over billions of years. Gould and Eldredge are saying, no, it happened in leaps or jumps, saltations. What they're trying to not say is, because we don't find any evidence, that proves it. See, in their mind, there's only 2 options. Evolution happened slowly, like Charlie said, or evolution happened quickly, like Stephen said. There is another option. Didn't happen at all. They don't want to consider that option for some reason. I don't know why. All fossils seem similar to living forms with no undisputed missing links discovered so far. Yes. Since we know evolution is a fact, even though there is no evidence, it happened slowly, this proves it happened quickly. That seems to be the logic, folks. I don't know how to handle with that. Professor at the Strasbourg Zoological Museum, can't pronounce his name, Bonauer, he said evolution is a fairy tale for grown-ups. The theory has helped nothing in the progress of science. It is useless. I would like somebody to show me what advancements we have because of the evolutionary theory. That's not why we have electricity. It's not why we have plastics or rayons or fabrics, or it's not why we went to the moon. It has nothing to do with, it's a useless theory. Malcolm Muggeridge said, I'm convinced the theory of evolution will be one of the great jokes in the history books of the future. Posterity will marvel that so flimsy, a dubious, and a hypothesis could be accepted with the incredible credulity that it has. Atomic Energy Commission. Scientists who go about teaching that evolution is a fact of life are great con men. The story they are telling may be the greatest hoax ever. In explaining evolution, we do not have one iota of fact. Charles Darwin said, to suppose that the eye could have been formed by natural selection seems absurd. But the textbook says the complex structure of the human eye may be the product of millions of years of evolution. They tell the kids, boys and girls, you might better understand how the eye might have evolved if you can picture a series of changes. See, it all takes place in the mind. Macroevolution only takes place in the imagination. We don't find any fossil evidence. We don't find any experimental evidence. It is purely a religion, and I think a silly one. But again, if somebody wants to believe that, that's fine. Just don't put it in our school system. The Bible says God formed the eye. 1 square inch of the back of your retina has 137 million light-sensitive cells. Now, how'd you like to be the electronics engineer and have to wire that thing up in 1 square inch? My daddy did. He's pretty smart, ain't he? I think Satan's using that evolution theory to lead folks to hell. Folks, don't be blinded by it. God loves you. He's got a plan for your life. He made you, and he's willing to forgive you. I had to repent one day and say, Lord, I'm sorry. I didn't believe you made this world. I used to believe in evolution. Lord, I'm sorry. Would you please forgive me? And now I believe in creation. I can't prove either one, But I think mine's more logical and reasonable, and I think the evidence points to it very clearly. Thank you so much.